Andrew Yang joins us now live. Hello, Andrew Yang.
Yes, the Lemon Yang reunion that everyone's been waiting for.
How
Lemon
you
Yang.
been? What's going on
I
with you?
I am generally great. The kids are off of school, so now that there's that. Just trying to do good things. Have some exciting work I'm doing, trying to make our relationship with our phones healthier. So that's upcoming. Uh, I know I've been in the news lately because I've been also trying to create a positive political alternative that brings us away from the extremes, and so that's growing all the time.
Okay, let's talk about that because you had no labels, right? And now you want a third party. Is this a third party? Is just another political party that you said it's not necessarily to the left or to the right? Explain what you're doing.
So uh, right now, about 75% of Americans don't even have two parties to choose from. Honestly, Don, where they live in a place where either the Democrats or the Republicans run everything, and run all three branches of government. And so, what Forward is doing is trying to create competition at the local level, ground up, in some of the 500,000 races around the country. And It's been great. And we're up to 53 mayors, city council members, state legislators, member of Congress, U.S. senator. And some of those people are affiliated with us. Some people are just out and out Forwardists. We have a Forward Party pledge that says you respect the rule of law and the Constitution, things that you would imagine would be pretty much taken for granted. But now, maybe not so much. You're also for structural reform, open primaries, ranked choice voting, fixes that are very near and dear to my heart that I think could make the system more rational and practical. It's very, very needed now more than ever. 50% of Americans say they're independent. 65% say the current system is not working so well. And so the question is like, why are we stuck voting for these options? And this past cycle, I was one of the people that raised my hand and said, "Hey guys, Democrats should have a primary. Running Joe Biden as the incumbent, not a great idea." I backed a guy named Dean Phillips, who was making that case in the
Yeah, I
primaries.
remember.
And then the Democrats, in my view, were really, really irresponsible. Said, no, no, it's Joe. And then it's not Joe. And then you have like a hurry up campaign for Kamala. And then you hand it all to Trump. And to me, that was all predictable and preventable, as Dean would say, because Joe Biden was running behind Trump the whole time. The party could have had a primary, and then you would have seen the next generation emerge. It would have been Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, JB Pritzker, and the gang, and like making their case. Westmore, perhaps, and that would have been like a real healthy, dynamic primary, and you would have had a very different contest in November.
Yeah, I feel like Dean Phillips, I spoke to him. I think he had sort of a when I saw him at the convention, I interviewed him like, and I told you so moment. He's like, I told you guys that this was going to happen. And he appears that he was right. But here's the question, Andrew. Do you think that by the way, my mom's in the chat. She says, "Hi, Andrew Yang."
Oh
That's
wow!
it. Hi, just say hi, Mama Cat. Look, do you think that that's actually realistic? I mean, obviously you do, but a lot of folks are going to say it's never going to happen, Andrew. There's not going to be a new party. There's going to be Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and that's the way our system is made up, and that's just it.
I actually very much take the reverse position, Don. Is like, does anyone really think that we're just going to be stuck with Democrats and Republicans, even as they both sink to generational lows in terms of
I hope
popularity and
not.
approval?
I hope not, because I am an independent, by the way, because that's the only alternative that have. Do I think of myself sometimes as maybe I have a libertarian? I have libertarian qualities. I have conservative qualities, and I have liberal qualities. And so I don't find myself in any particular box. So I just go independent. But if there is a party that appeal to my sensibilities, then I would certainly, yeah, I'd probably join that party because I'm sick of what's happening on the right and the left.
Well, then you should check out Forward, my friend. But it's just a matter of time before there's a political realignment. As a numbers guy, as a data guy, you can see that right now Democrats have an approval rating of, I think it's 29%. Republicans not that much better, maybe 36%. And so vast majority of Americans right now are like, why are we stuck with these two options? And I can tell you very clearly why we're stuck with these two options. It's because of a set of statewide rules and regulations that try and enforce one party rule in, again, three-quarters of the states. And then you have only 10% of congressional races that are genuinely contested. And both parties say, look, we're fighting over there. And maybe 7 or 8 states where it's genuinely contested. And so the question is, will enough Americans just raise their hands and say, hey, why is it I don't have any real choices? Why is it that the primaries decide everything? Like, why is it that we wind up with two unsatisfactory presidential candidates, in recent memory? And so if enough of us get together, it's 100% a solvable problem. Now, is it cheap? No. Is it fast? No. Is it easy? No. The independents come in all sorts of stripes and shapes and sizes, such that, and the joke is like some independents are independents because they don't like joining stuff, and so getting a group of non-joiners to join something and work together also not easy. But it's necessary. It's vital. It's just a matter of time before it breaks out, because otherwise we're just going to wind up with a worse and worse system and worse outcomes.
Yeah. Um, how but
And
the
by the way,
thing
you're
is,
talking to one of the experts on making this stuff happen in real life.
okay, so then let's talk about that because I've been frustrated that sometimes I want to vote in, maybe a Democratic primary. Sometimes I want to vote in a Republican primary or whatever to make sure that the candidate that I think is on, that is looking out for my interests, that they get in. But we're locked out of that process as independents, as you know. So how do you fix that, Andrew?
There's an organization called Open Primaries. It's very obvious, and they're trying to make it so that you could vote in a Democratic primary, Republican primary, if you wanted to, as an independent. The parties are fighting it, but the vast majority of Americans are like, sure. I mean, by the way, American taxpayers are paying for these primaries that we can't even participate in, which doesn't seem right. And so, Open Primaries is putting up, new victories all the time because the people know that that's the way it should be. If you look at the 500,000 local races around the country, thousands of those positions are technically nonpartisan in terms of mayors and many school board, a lot of county executives, some city council. So we're recruiting, and by the way, we have like a mayor of one of the top 40 cities in the U.S. who's raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'm joining you guys." The mayor of Detroit, Michigan, a guy named Mike Duggan, turned in his party badge as a Democrat and said, I'm now an independent and I'm running for governor of Michigan." And he's, I think, polling at like 20%, 150 black faith leaders just endorsed him. He's competitive. And so you could have the governor of Michigan, which is a pivotal state on multiple levels, be an independent next November. You could have an independent governor of California also next November. You could have millions of Americans voting in an independent primary in 27, 28. So these things are all right there for us. But in the meantime, it's helping various positive folks win some of the local races. It might not be where you and I live necessarily, Don, because you and I live in New
Mhm.
York City, where it'd be very, very hard for an independent to win a lot of these races. But there are opportunities around the country because a lot of existing mayors even are like, I hate apologizing for Team Blue or Team Red when all I'm trying to do is fill potholes and make stuff work better.
Yeah. So listen, Jane Burns in the comments says, we have a ton of good Dems right now. Two exclamation points. From JB to Pete to Jasmine to Corey et al. We shouldn't vote for our interests, and she has that in quotes, but for the country's because we are not a homogenous nation. I agree with that. When I say our interests, I mean the country's interests because I vote for a woman's right to choose for women's reproductive health. I vote to make sure that children have meals in schools and whatever. I have no kids. I pay my taxes for the schools and everything that I don't use. When I didn't have a car, the roads and all of that. And so when I say my interests, I mean the interests of the country. I don't vote selfishly just for me, as I find that many people, especially now the MAGA folks are doing. So, Jane, I agree with you. But
Oh, no, I wanted
the,
to dig into this in a little bit. So, like, for
yeah,
example, let's say Cory Booker. I'm friends with Cory. I like Cory. I mean, we spent a lot of time together on the trail in the last cycle. And let's say a majority of Americans agree with Jane and you, Donna, and me on women's reproductive rights. Like, why are we backsliding in the way that we are? we should be very frustrated. And the reason why we're backsliding is because we have a political system that doesn't represent most of us.
Right.
You have a majority of states now that are red, and red states and rural states are overrepresented in the U.S. Senate in particular. And so, if you want Jane and Corey and you and me to have our preference met when it comes to women's reproductive rights, you'd look at the US Senate and say, okay, how are we going to make this happen? And Democrats have been doing worse and worse in the Senate over the last several cycles. They're down 53-47 right now. There are four Democratic senators who've retired this cycle who said, I'm not going to run again. And if you look at the way the map plays out in 26, 28, 30, it's very unlikely that Corey is going to be in the majority in the U.S. Senate anytime soon because, there are more vulnerabilities and problems for the Democratic side than opportunities. And the opportunities would require them winning in states that they used to be competitive in, someplace like Ohio, used to be a swing state. Sherrod Brown just lost. And so the Democrats have done a poor job of staying competitive in enough states to be able to win the U.S. Senate. And it's gotten to a point where Ezra Klein, who's very Demi, has raised his hand and said, you know what, there needs to be an independent movement trying to be competitive in places like Nebraska, where if you had a D next to your name, you're going to lose for sure. But if you run as an independent, the way Dan Osborne did, in 24, he got to 50% of the vote in Ruby Red, Nebraska, to a
Mm.
point where the Republicans had to spend $13 million, bringing his numbers down to 47%. In a in a like a pivotal year, and they didn't want to spend eight figures in a freaking red state defending a Senate seat for an incumbent, but they had to. And the reason why Dan was competitive was in large part where he said, "Look, I'm not listening to party bosses. I'm a mechanic. I'm a Navy vet." He's, by the way, pro-choice, and said like I'm going to be for Nebraskans. Got to 50%. And so, if Jane wants Corey to be able to vote on women's reproductive rights in the U.S. Senate, what Jane needs is for folks like Dan Osborne to win in places like Nebraska that a Democrat would be a non-starter in. If Dan Osborne ran the exact same campaign and just had a D next to his name, do you think he gets to 50% in Nebraska? I think he probably stops at 41%, which is what happens in these races because they get nationalized very, very quick. So you need Dan Osborne, who's, by the way, probably going to run again in Nebraska in 26 against another Republican incumbent named Ricketts. It's going to be like the billionaire versus the mechanic. It's a very good narrative. But you like, I'm a math guy. I'm a numbers guy. I want good things for people. And I look at it and say, look, you can be, I like Corey a lot. I probably line up with him on the vast majority of issues. But like, Corey can't get to 51 votes because the Democratic Party is so deep underwater in most of the country.
Yeah. Jane, as a follow-up, we like the folks in the comments. Andrew, isn't one of the reasons for that is because of the yellow dog dims? I am from Louisiana, and it's turning red. From the yellow dog dims turning red.
Uh, it's been tough for Dems in places like Louisiana for a while, and it pains me. Having spent, I was just talking to a guy named Rob Sand, who's now the Democratic candidate for governor in Iowa. I've been to Iowa dozens of times, and Iowa, by the way, was also a swing state that went for Barack Obama in I think in the general in 2012, even 2008, and then now Iowa's gone +9 Republican, and uh, like it makes me sad because I hung out with all the Democrats of Iowa, and all of a sudden they're in this minority. Rob's trying to turn it around, but so it's not just the Dems of Louisiana, it's the Dems of Ohio, the Dems of Iowa. You could even throw Missouri in that mix. I mean, like Missouri used to be competitive, and so the Democrats have been ceding all of this ground to Republicans and getting less and less popular in a lot of these states that they used to be competitive in. I mean,
Mm.
some people here might not love Joe Manchin and all and some of the elements of his record, but I'll tell you, Joe Manchin might be the last freaking Democrat you see out of West Virginia in a long time. And so, do you want like essentially a rubber stamp for Trump or like a figure that can make the case? I mean, Sherrod Brown, Joe Manchin, they're like unfortunately, like a dying breed of a Democrat who could compete in a right-leaning state because of their connection to the people. And so Louisiana, I think, is unfortunately in the same vein.
But Manchin isn't a Democrat anymore, right? Didn't he?
Oh no, I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying is like, look, like, I mean, like I did not love Joe, like Joe's stance on some of the legislation down the stretch, but I also knew that after Joe Manchin's out of that seat, is just going to be some Republican who's just like, sure, like
Yeah,
whatever the team wants.
yeah. And Beth Barrett saying Missouri is red, Andrew.
Yeah, but if you rewind to 2004, I think Missouri was actually a competitive state in the general. You had a guy named Jason Kander, who think was the Democratic Secretary of State there.
I
So,
remember Jason. I like Jason. He's also a veteran, served
yes,
the country. Yeah.
the point is, a lot of states that people in this chat would be like, Missouri equals red. You'd be like, well, 20 years ago it wasn't. Like Ohio right now probably reads as red to most everyone in this chat. And it frankly is pretty red right now. But there used to be this aphorism in politics that as goes Ohio, so goes the country. Ohio used to be the ultimate bellwether, and then now it's like, well, turn Republican. And the race that
So it's still a bellwether.
I mean, it's still kind of bellwether, it's true. But so my another friend of mine, Tim Ryan, ran for the Senate there against JD Vance in the last
Yeah.
cycle, and I was watching that race really closely, Don, because I thought Tim Ryan was an above average candidate. He's above average human, he's above average candidate. And I thought JD Vance was a below average candidate. He won a three-way race with, maybe 36% of the vote. So he didn't have like a massive um vein of popularity in that state. And unfortunately, he still beat Tim by maybe 8 points. And so it just goes to show that, like these places are congealing into nationalized, like partisan loyalty, where you could take like an above average Dem and a below average Republican, and people are still like, just like, and this was a state that like Barack Obama again won in 2008 for sure. I think also in 2012. And the central frustration I'm trying to evince here is like the Democrats look up and be like, "Hey, we used to be competitive in these places. Now we lose them. We lose them all the time. Why is that?" And that there hasn't really been any kind of real process or soul searching. What there has been is like, let's trade Ohio and Iowa and these other states for Georgia, Nevada, and like something in the Sun Belt, and then do it that way. Like, and so that's been, um, to me, that's been like a contributor to the polarization. But it also makes it so that you can't win a majority in the U.S. Senate. And Democrats, like again, if Ezra Klein, who's a very smart guy, like likes numbers like me, you looked at it and was like, yeah, you can't get a majority in the Senate, so you need a third force to support like the Dan Osborns of the world to try and contend in places like Nebraska. In part because the Dems aren't competitive in most states anymore.
Stand by for a word from our sponsors. Today's Lemon Drop is brought to you by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's summer, campfires, late night conversations. People are swapping stories, but lately, one group is trying to control the whole story, claiming that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation and pushing their religion into classrooms, into courtrooms, and even into our doctor's office. In Arizona, voters just protected abortion rights in the state constitution, but politicians are trying to undermine it anyway. Things like this are happening all over our country. This isn't about personal beliefs, it's about power, and it's all happening under the banner of Christian nationalism. That's where the Freedom from Religion Foundation comes in. They have been defending church-state separation since 1978 in the courts, in the schools, and wherever religion tries to take the wheel. If you believe government should serve everyone, not just the religious right, join them. Go to ffrf.us/freedom or text DON to 511-511 and become a member today. Just go to ffrf.us/freedom and text Don to 511-511 now, because the only story that should run this country is ours, not theirs. Text fees may apply.
Well, let's talk about this. So, all right, I understand what you want to do. I'm not so sure that it'll work, but I'm hopeful. So if you can do it, then do it. But you're reaching out, and look, I don't think it's controversial to say that Elon Musk is a polarizing figure, especially now after considering what happened with Doge, et cetera. So you're reaching out to Elon Musk to potentially team up for a new political party. Are you still doing that? Are you still interested in reaching out to Elon Musk? How does that help?
Well, what it was, Don, I think most people know this if you're on social media, which if I mean, I don't know if Substack qualifies as social media. I don't know, does it? It must.
No, it's not. I don't know if it's social. It's digital media. It's still streaming.
I will say that Substack seems very edifying and wholesome in a way that most of the other platforms do not. So what happened was Elon put up a post on X saying, "Hey, like maybe there should be a third party for the 80% in the middle who are unrepresented by both parties." And uh, I said, "Yeah, we're working on it." in the in the thread, which we are, and we got maybe 6 or 7 thousand followers out of that thread, and then I got reached out to by every journalist, under the sun, and decided to do an interview with Politico, and then just made a case for, look, this is why America could use a third party to reduce the polarization, to improve the incentives, to be more representative, and that's been the story thus far. So Elon did endorse me in the last cycle, 2020, but it's been a while. I mean, I haven't spoken to him in years.
Okay, so that's old. Well, something that's new that I know that's near and dear to your heart, and that's AI. And why are you so, I don't know, interested is the word, or is it obsessed with AI?
Yeah, you could say obsessed. I'll take it. If you all remember my presidential campaign in 2019, 2020, I was just walking around saying AI is coming. It's going to come for your jobs. And we're going to need to start distributing cash at scale. Universal basic income, the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month, was the case I was making. Fast forward to now, and you have the CEO of Anthropic, which is one of the biggest AI companies, saying, "Yep, we're going to automate away the white collar work first, and you should probably tax us more to start paying for stuff because we're going to hoover up a lot of the jobs and the value." And he's right. I talked to folks in the industry. Uh, a lot of people celebrated college graduation in the last couple of weeks, and you're already seeing data that recent college graduates aren't able to find entry level white collar jobs at the same level because a lot of those jobs are getting replaced by AI. So this is just going to get faster and more extreme. AI models double in capacity every 7 months or so.
Mhm. Wow.
Uh, and one of the things I joke is like, we do not, like you and me, Don, we're lucky if we stay the same, in a given month.
If we have
So
hair,
yeah, it's almost like you're like riding that plateau. So uh, this should be a major, major cornerstone of our policy discussions, but it's not because right now, and it's like I do not like the big beautiful bill. It deserves another name. Um, we should be taking much more drastic measure to help people manage transitions as AI comes and decimates the call center jobs, eventually the truck driving jobs, and that's the most common job in 29 states. I was talking about robot trucks in Iowa in 2019, and they're now hitting the highways for the first time. Uh, the robot taxis now are taking certain markets by storm. And
right?
I hate to say this for folks, but sometimes you prefer the robot taxi. I mean, people have issues with the Uber driver sometimes, and so this stuff's coming hot and heavy, and it's going to displace a lot of people, a lot of Americans.
Yeah. Well, someone, Rebecca Jameson says, my sister's hours have been cut because AI now writes her work schedule. And we're going to see a lot of that, unfortunately. AI now writes, I reached out to, Andrew, I reached out to a paper that wrote something that was incorrect about me. And I'd never really do that, but I did. And they said, oh, we're sorry. AI wrote that story. And they just put it in there and say, write this story about such and such, and it does it automatically. And maybe it doesn't, necessarily fact check. But AI and Chat GPT aren't 100% accurate.
No, they're not. But at this point, people think, yeah, it's close enough. Here you go, article on unfiltered. And it's like, oh, like Don Coffee Craig did. Sorry about that. It wasn't anything a human produced. Uh, it's come about faster than even I thought when I was running on this stuff in 2019. Uh, like um, it's incredible how much value these companies have already uh, sucked up into themselves. Really, like if you look at the valuations of all the mega tech companies, there is an arms race dynamic where they're all like, "Hey, we're going to spend a gajillion on these computing centers. We're going to spend a gajillion on data. We're going to spend a gajillion on these models." And uh, they're going to be looking for return on investment, and you know where it's going to be. It's going to be from a lot of these jobs.
Yeah. So then what's our future then? Do we know? Are you saying we need to slow down AI? There needs to be more restrictions on it? Do we pull back? Because the genie's out of the bottle, Andrew. I mean, you talked about in 2019, but I don't think people necessarily some people were listening, but not everyone.
Yeah, if I had one, I definitely would have wanted to put the brakes on a lot of these things, and said, "Look, like, you have to convince me or my AI czar here that you guys are buttoned up on um, some of these impacts, and not just the job displacement, which is to me number one, but
Hmm.
you also have concerns about mass identity theft. You have concerns about disinformation and misinformation. You have concerns about uh, um, being able to penetrate our infrastructure in various ways. So there are a lot of things that like AI is going to enable some very excellent things, but there are going to be some negative consequences. And so, if you had responsible government, you'd be like, okay, let's try and mitigate some of the harms and maximize some of the benefits. And one of the harms to me is going to be a lot of people losing jobs. So we should be looking at an AI tax, a data tax, and transferring that value to the American people in various ways. But the future we're heading towards right now, one of the things I keep in mind all the time is like you tend to trend towards either dystopia or utopia, and so right now we're definitely trending towards the former.
So, dystopia is the former. Okay, so listen, let's talk about New York City, where we are right now. The biggest story in New York City, well, at least for now, is the mayoral race, the race for mayor in New York City. And you have Andrew Cuomo, who has high, name recognition, right? And was leading in the polls by big numbers. And then all of a sudden, you've got this Zoran Mamdani young man. Not, I guess you can still call him a political novice, but he's now catching up or has caught up with Andrew Cuomo, and so we don't know with ranked choice voting where this election is going to go. I mean, it's got to be fascinating to you to see this twist here. I believe that this, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I believe that as it turns out, he hit the nail on the head with the issue that's most important to people, and that's affordability. While other people were concentrating on crime, which is a big issue, or sort of going back to norms or whatever that may be, he's concentrating on affordability, about the working class and the poor in New York. And I think that is resonating more than any other issue in this race. And he has a very good chance of winning.
Yes, to all of the above. Zoran is relatively new, but he's really compelling as a messenger. He's got a clear vision, very clear set of priorities. You'd have to have been under a rock in New York not to know that he's for free and fast buses, cheaper groceries, freeze the rent.
Yeah, I shouldn't be able to catch up to the bus if it's so slow, and the buses should be free. And yeah.
Yeah.
But the rich people don't like that. The rich people are like, it's crime, crime, crime. It's salt. We want our salt taxes, deductions and all that. But the poor people, working class, are like, yeah, free buses. Yeah, freeze the rent.
Yeah, to me right now it's a toss up. I was a front runner in this race 4 years ago, and like there's a dynamic in the New York City mayoral where the front runners tend to get caught up to the stretch. And then it wasn't just me. I mean, if you look back, like there were various other figures, Christine Quinn, Mark Green, like other
Yeah.
figures, where it's like whoever like seems to be in a pole position often gets overtaken down the stretch. And the energy certainly with Zoran. Um, I appreciated how Zoran and Brad Lander cross endorsed. I thought that was like a good use of right choice voting. Very collegial. Right now, it'd be too close to call. The big thing I want to say though to people is that most people in New York are accustomed to the Democratic primary deciding who the next mayor is going to be. Because it's like whoever wins that then just cruises over the token Republican opposition. And the margin tends to be something like 2-1. Like the Dem nominee might get 65, and then the Republican might get, 30, and then, some random other types might get dribs and drabs. This time, I think the dynamic is going to be different because whoever loses between Zoran and Andrew Cuomo could run in the general election under a different line. Andrew Cuomo already has an independent line in the general, and Zoran could run under the Working Families Party. So it's the winner of the Democratic nomination, and then the loser of the Democratic nomination, and then Eric Adams, and then Curtis Lee was running as a Republican, and then the guy named Jim Walden who's running as an independent. And the general is not ranked choice voting. So you can make a case for any of, you know, 3 to 4 of these folks getting to 20+% and winning a fragmented race. This, by the way, has been Eric Adams' theory of the case, who's still the mayor, though, we tend to forget about that. And because he's not in the primary anymore, they're just like, oh yeah, that guy's still the mayor. So that guy's theory of the case has been, I'm going to creep up and win the general with 25% of the vote or whatever it is. So it's going to be a non-foregone conclusion what happens the general election. And you can imagine, let's say Andrew Cuomo wins the nomination. Zoran still has a very, very enthusiastic base. And if he ran on Working Families, he could get 20% of the general. And the same could be true in reverse, where if Zoran wins the Democratic nomination, Andrew Cuomo could turn around and be like, we got to win the general. Like, say now, if Andrew, between the two of them, I think if Andrew Cuomo loses the Democratic race, I think he'd have like a harder case to make, saying like, hey, like back me in the general, because you would have just lost to Zoran head to head, and then like saying we're gonna beat him in the general when there are some other candidates that are in that general space is like maybe a slightly tougher case. But the general election is much more of an actual race this time than we've seen in a long, long time in New York.
If we're talking next year, who's the mayor of New York? This is next year, this time.
Geez, man, I go back and forth all the time. I genuinely do not know. I can see Andrew Cuomo winning. I can see Zoran winning. And I'm sorry that's wishy-washy, but it is the truth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, too bad there's an Andrew Yang, because that would be great.
Oh, it's nice of you to say, Don. I will say I do get that on the street all the time. People are like, Yang, why aren't you running? And be like, oh, I'll be back. It's back in no time is what I say.
Yeah, I remember Yang for president. Yeah, Yang for mayor.
Yeah. Yang for something. Yang for something. That could be the new sign.
Someone,
Yang just for
Aaron
something.
says, come on, guess, LOL, guess.
Oh, you want me to? Oh, geez. I'm sorry, I'm being so wishy-washy. The other thing is, I actually do have people working with and for both candidates.
Yeah.
So
So
there
I
is
will say
that too.
I will say this. Look, if you had to, I asked, when asked months ago, I was like, that it's name recognition. Of course, it's going to be Cuomo. Of course, I'm not so sure now because Zoran's base is so rabid. It's reminding me of Trump's base. And it's actually reminding me of Trump's populism, right? Running as a populist. So I think it could very well be Zoran.
I will say I was in the same place as you, Don. I thought it was Cuomo's for most of the last number of months, and then the last several weeks, I was like, oh wow, there's like a lot of energy, a lot of energy. I will say, is just one data point. I had an offline party in Manhattan last week, and over a dozen people came up to me with some pitch for Zoran. So the enthusiasm is very, very
Yeah.
palpable.
Yeah, same. And especially young people. And if you look at the donations, like you look at Andrew Cuomo's donations, and it's a lot of people like on mostly, the Upper East Side or whatever, and West Side. Those are the wealthy people, so that helps. But if you look at Zoran's donations, it's out in the boroughs, and it's just people giving small amounts of money, and he is animating a part of the electorate that's not usually so animated or excited about political campaigns and elections. And so, just as Trump won all of those bros and dudes and young people in 2024, I think Zoran could end up doing something very similar here in New York in 2025 in the mayoral race. I do.
Yeah, a lot of these races are about who peaks at the right time, and it certainly does feel like Zoran is peaking at the right time.
Okay, 2028. Who's the Democratic candidate?
Oh, geez. Okay, here's the qualifications I do. And I did an interview with Tara Palmieri. Do you know Tara, Don?
Of course, I know Tara. She was on the program this
See,
past Saturday.
I thought so. I love you. I love Tara. So Tara and I sat down and talked through some of the folks who are going to run in um, the Democratic nomination in 28. And what I said was, look, I think it's going to be a governor um, and someone who did not run in the cycle I ran in 2020. Because I think the case you have to make if you're a Democratic presidential candidate in 28 is, look, I had nothing to do with whatever the heck was going on in DC around like Joe Biden's health and the border and all of that stuff. Like I was in Lansing, I was in Harrisburg, I was in um, Maryland, doing my thing. And then people will be like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's like, yeah, I was getting stuff done in my state, and here's what I got done. So that leads me to Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, Westmore, Andy Bashir, JB Pritzker. Gavin is an interesting one. Like he's very talented and has a lot of notoriety, but like I
You're
think
reading my
California
mind.
is like um, you know, California is going through some things and like losing a lot of people because of affordability concerns and like a bunch of other things. But I think it's a governor who is sort of like a fresh feeling figure.
So, you read my mind about Gavin Newsom. So Gavin is getting a lot of love lately, with the whole National Guard thing. But how long does that last up until 2028? Um,
On the
I don't know.
talent level, in terms of ability to do an interview and because one of the fun things, Don, this is something that you and I experience, is like we've met a lot of these people, and some of them you're just like, oh, like I can see it, like or oh, like that person's really talented at it, or sometimes even that person's charismatic. So Gavin is a very, very talented politician. So he's gonna be there. But I do think he's got some like baggage to overcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the convention, I had my social media team, these young kids who they love Zoran. They love like AOC or whatever. They're just young people, and they believe that the party needs to sort of lean into their progressive side. So when they met Gavin, they're like, "Dude, he's got so much aura. He had the most aura of everybody at the convention," and so they were just really taken by him. And then after his podcast with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, and they were just like negative aura, not interested, which was surprising to me. But now people are back on the Gavin love train after.
Yeah, man. People's memories are short in this space. I mean, if you have like a good moment, or in his case, like a good setup and a good clash with Trump. McGavin's talented. Like one of the things I think people did discount a lot is you hang out with these folks and you're like, some of these people will be like, man, I think that's not going to go so well. and,
Yeah,
and then you'll see press accounts being like, oh, why not? Like U.S. Senator, da da da. And you're just like, no, no. But Gavin's got Riz. I mean, the man does. I mean, he does. So it's like it's
yeah,
gonna carry you pretty far.
yeah.
That's
He's like, look, he looks like the politician, the president in a movie, right?
He looks like a TV movie politician or a
Yeah,
movie politician. Bill
central
Maher made the
casting.
same comment about Gretchen Whitmer. He's like, Gretchen Whitmer looks like the movie in every TV show, and so we'll be like,
The
sure,
woman president in every movie or TV show, right? Or
yeah.
yeah. But you did not mention Pete.
So my criteria as governor of a
Right,
state also didn't run in the 2020 cycle, and so
right.
those don't fit. I know, but I will say if you take the same criterion I was using for Gavin, Pete's very talented. and talent will take you very, very far. But I just feel like America checked us out in 2020, and then now there's such a hunger for like a new turn the page figure uh, for the Democratic Party is just my feeling. Like, I think Pete will be very formidable and be there the entire time, but I think the Democratic Party is going to settle on a new figure.
Yeah. Westmore. Do you think they need someone said, well, not someone, a lot of my progressive friends, Democrat friends say, we need a straight white guy. No, not, we don't need a black guy anymore. We don't need a gay guy. We don't need a woman. We need a straight white man. That's what they say. I'm not saying that, so don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can know. I mean, I think Westmore is uh a contender and might be the nominee. I mean, West is just also very compelling, charismatic, great guy, great family, military background. A lot of
He's
folks I
just
know.
so nice and so likable. I mean, and not to mention how he looks, and he's got a beautiful
He
wife
looks
and
like an
family.
action hero, and Wes's vibe and energy appeals to a lot of like the moderate independents I know. Some moderate Republicans are totally fine with Westmore. And so when folks talk about, hey, you need a straight white male or whatever, it's like maybe not. Like these 2.5 years are an eternity in politics. So people who think the party needs one thing, like could think the party needs a very different thing. Uh, by the time early 28 rolls around, who knows? Maybe they'll think they'll need another magical Asian man from the future who wants to give everyone money. Who knows?
Yes, a magical Asian man from the future. Last name Yang, first name Andrew. How about that?
I mean, I resemble that.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you. Did you talk about everything you wanted to talk about? Are you good?
Shit, man, I could do this all day with you, Don. But missed you, brother. Love you. Let's get together. This summer.
Yes, I'd love to. You have my number. I just texted you before. I lost connectivity and we couldn't do this. Everything went out. And when that happens, you just have to lean into it and say, it'll be back. It's going to be fine. And then
You, me, and Tara, and whoever else we want, and we'll have
yeah.
like a little confab.
Oh, we got to do the whole thing. I got a whole group of independent journalists that are out here doing the work.
Really?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh man, I will buy you all dinner.
Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. I'll text you.
That's it. Andrew Yang, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.